Martha! What was Lex Jr.'s motivation? Before I continue with this particular video, it's going to be a little bit lengthy, as well as it's going to cover a range of possibilities that this is what I personally picked up on. If you miss certain key things, or you perceive them as differently, or you have different interpretations, I am willing to hear your thoughts on it, because I like to have this discussion, especially with people who pay attention to the dialogues of the movie. So just keep that in mind. This is my interpretation of what I picked up from the movies, and literally paying attention to every single dialogue moment throughout the entirety of the film. So a lot of people question Lex Jr.'s motivations in the entire movie. Some people actually missed everything about it, because either they got bored with the slow moments and they didn't really pay attention to the dialogue, or they thought that he was just rambling nonsensical rants with this dialogue, which they actually weren't. They actually held a lot of key information. So if you remember more about the movie, you can probably see how his motivations tie into the motif of the film, which centers around gods, mortals, and devils. Specifically, pointing out mortals' placement in terms of that of gods and devils into a further summation, basically the gray lines between good and evil and general morality. So before you go literally all, ugh, Philosophy 2001 is such a boring class, or, oh my god, you're so pretentious, hear me out, because even if it is a bit pretentious, the motif and thing has been literally in your face, obnoxiously and obviously, throughout the entirety of the film. And it's no different than like the motif that you saw with that of Man of Steel. It's riddled with a bunch of philosophy and pretty pretentious, obnoxious things, but I like those things, and if you caught up on those things, it makes things much more sense in the long run. I know that's a weird sentence, but it does. And one of the key things to understanding the mindset and motivation behind Lex Jr.'s plans and actions, you kind of have to start back to like literally every single dialogue moment that he had. Literally the countless moments of him making references to his dad. And based on those references, you understand the pivotal point at which Lex's mind and his state of mind and his sanity is then drawn on a graph, on a pinpoint. It's very specific. You get the idea that the world probably did not love, but they recognized and acknowledged great feat and actions from that of Lex Sr. And when you take that in consideration, that he's no longer here, and you have Jr., who's making reference after reference after reference, it starts to paint a picture. And you can break it down into three main parts of the movie that basically gives you three massive hints to the kind of character that Lex Jr. is, why, and it basically lays the road for that motivation. One, the party that Lex threw, the one where, you know, Clark and Bruce first meet and they have the whole little communication about the Bat of Gotham. When Lex gave his speech, you know, he makes a few references about his dad, and he quickly loses his train of thought and gets off on a tangent and begins to get kind of psychotic in his rambles. But it's very important that it states about the tradition, the annual motives of that his father set in place. So after talking about his father, he starts to get a little loose in the mind of it. That's your first key, that there's traumatic, you know, interactions between Junior and Senior, and how literally what really brought in the guest isn't Junior, it's the legacy left behind by Lex Senior. That's our starting point. Point two is the talk with the senator inside the Luthor Manor, or their mansion, or their house, their estate, whatever you want to call it. This was like the biggest, obnoxious, in your face, this is the entire motif theme, and how everything kind of boils down based off of these philosophical thoughts. Literally that painting, when he's talking to the senator and he's like, look at this painting, it's my father's, so forth and so forth. Do you want to know the oldest lie in the book, Senator? It's that the devils don't come from beneath us, they come from the sky. He then makes the notion to the fact that he should flip the painting, so the devils and demons are on top and the angels are below. And he makes a statement saying he won't change it because he won't change anything that his father has set up. Another key point about the meticulousness of his father's legacy and what the father has left behind, and the influence and matters of how Lex Jr. sees this. The third point that's really important is the conversation between Lex and Superman on top of the roof, when he talks about his past, and we talk about how he has good old Martha locked away, and is trying to basically blackmail and manipulate Superman. It is here that you get the final piece of the entire puzzle. The final piece is from the quote, and I quote, "No man in the sky intervened when I was a boy to deliver me from daddy's fist and abominations." It is that last crucial, and it was again, it's really obvious, really in your face of the entire movie. Lex Jr. was in an abusive relationship with his father. His father abused him physically, emotionally, and probably verbally and all this other stuff, and it created this mindset that shattered Lex. That's why he's insane. And it's even toppled after that, when he told Superman he learned one of two things. Either God is all powerful and not all good, or God is all good and not all powerful. And that wraps up everything in full circle. How does that wrap things up in a full circle? I still don't get it. So, we have the notions that Lex Sr. has a very, or had, we don't know if he's still alive or not, a very high social standing that commanded the power of the public, a figure that the public, if not liked, because we don't see much animosity towards Lex Sr. about his history or his presence, but you do get a lot of respect. I didn't see much love and admiration, but you get that level of respect. So the public sees Lex Sr. in one light, but behind closed doors, his son, Lex Jr., sees an entirely different side to him. An abusive, dark, and very, emotionally disturbed side. Also, to make a note, a lot of people are saying that we have never had a Lex Luthor this crazy unhinged before. That's not true. Lex has always been brilliant, calm, and collective, yes, but he has always had that diabolical, insane side of him. Think about it. Have you ever seen a good explanation as to why Lex in any of the previous versions hated Superman rather than ego and pride? And even in the animated series, where most people draw their versions of Lex that they like the most, you can definitely see points in it where he has just become unhinged and crazed, maniacal, to the point of having experiments done to his own body just to be more like Superman. Lex is crazy. They're just making it more obvious in this version. The idea that people can see what they want to see on the surface, but that is basically hiding the roots of all evil, then you have the same thing going on with Superman. A being who, after the events of Man of Steel, is being heralded as a hero by some, hated by others, and worshipped as a god to the last bit. Lex sees this as a complete reminder of so many things dealing with his father. He sees that people worship and appreciate Superman on a surface level, but to Lex, this entity, this thing, this being who people will see as a god because it's a motif, God, mortals, devils, he cannot fathom that Superman can be all good and all powerful. It's either one or the other, and if he's all powerful, then he's not all good, and if he's all good, he's not all powerful. And that what leads to the Senate bombing. People get confused thinking that Lex did this to try to frame Superman into making the public think Superman had a part of it. That wasn't the case. And while some people may argue, well, what about the news and how people were saying, was Superman in on it? Was he a part of it? Blah, blah, blah. That was basically the movie's take on realism, where you have so many people who are just so invested in doing conspiracy theories. Someone is going to have that notion to make that statement. That's all. That was just like little fodder for the, yeah. What Lex was doing was showing Superman, and possibly the public, but I think it was more a direct message to Superman that, hey, people think you're all powerful, yet you could not stop a bomb that was literally a foot or two next to you. So he's not all powerful. Or he could be saying that he is all powerful and he's not all good to the point where he didn't care to stop the bomb. He's showing those two relevant points and statements from his warped perspective on morals. That's him doing the manipulation. That's him, a far simple mortal, manipulating that who is seen as a god. That's one of those challenges. That's one of the reoccurring things with Lex and Superman right now. And he does all this specifically for those 3 points earlier, where they derived from fear. You know, the idea that someone could be masquerading as a hero, be horrible behind doors, which is a concept that kind of hints towards the injustice field, which the Flash movie may be about, in terms of him breaking the timeline and starting the injustice thing and having to fix that and put everything back on track, which will tie into the whole making a portal and talking to Bruce in BVS, and it just furthers that fear to him. The other thing is it creates jealousy. You know, if he is all good and not all powerful, but you know, still all good, and he's saving people as many as he can, but no one was there for him when he needed someone the most. No one came from the sky then. That's that jealousy complex. And finally, the superiority complex of Lex, because Lex has to be the best. Now that Lex Sr. is out of the way, we're not sure if he's dead or he's just somewhere else, or if Lex himself was the one that killed him. But now Lex Jr. is running things. He has this potential to be in the spot that his father was, to have all this power. He has this superiority that he needs to be in control, and he decides he's going to take on a god. And I'm using that term loosely. I mean Superman. I'm just following the motifs here. Just follow the motif. So he weaves together this plan to have mortal overthrow God, and he basically utilizes Batman for this. A lot of people kind of hate the fact that Lex was able to discover that Batman is Bruce Wayne, but people fail to remember that Lex is actually one of the most brilliant people on Earth in the DC universe, and his intelligence actually does rivals that of Batman. It's a thing. And with public knowledge of Bruce Wayne having, you know, his parents died at a young age, murdered, and the events of Man of Steel destroying Wayne Financial, the building that housed all of Bruce's employees and whatnot for that particular branch, those are 2 things that are already public. And then you have the third, that since he does know that Bruce is Batman, he can remember Robin is dead. A Robin, we don't know which Robin. I'm telling you, it's Jason Todd. No, Jason Todd is not the Joker. But yeah, if you take this in consideration, you can then start to see why Lex is able to manipulate Batman even further. You know, feed that rage, the letters, the intercepting of the employees' paychecks, the you let your family die. That was Lex, because it's stated from the dialogue with him and Superman on the top of the building. Lex did that. So he sends Superman to go fight Bruce, or, you know, Batman. And when that backfires and Superman comes back after the whole Martha thing, you have this dialogue where, you know, Lex is, you know, pissed. His plan backfired. You know, he wanted to set up mortal versus God and have mortal overthrow God, and in a way that kind of came out to be the results, but you know. So then Lex gives the next pivotal, you know, point of the motif of the theme of the movie, if you're still following me, which was, if man won't kill God, then the devil will do it. And this creates another point or another pillar for Lex trying to, you know, get into that God complex where he creates life. Again, very obnoxious, in your face. I'm pretty sure, you know, the critic would be like, dun 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 dun, you know, various different things, but that's another key point. So now mortal has created life as if they were a god, and what they created was a devil to destroy God. I mean, that's literally the final, you know, bow, the icing on the cake. This all derives from Lex's personal despair. It derives from his own, you know, history, his background, you know, abuse of his father, living in a type of lifestyle that he did for years, and again, no one was there to save him because his father was untouchable. It is this team's creative way of creating a true reason for Lex to despise Superman for far more reason than just I'm a bad guy, or just because Superman gets all the credit, or just because, you know, I'm so crazy that I have to be better than an alien from a different planet. And that's not to say that I don't personally enjoy the previous dozens of interpretations of Lex in comic books, cartoons, and etc. But the reason why I did not mind Jesse Eisenberg's Lex is because his story, his background had a really solid foundation. They could have expounded on things far more. They could have made things far more evident and obvious for the majority of the audience. Not that I'm saying anyone, you know, wasn't smart enough or intelligent enough to catch these things. It's just people go to certain movies for certain things, and when you have these, you know, philosophy and interpretation of binding of things with characters, a lot of stuff can fly over people's heads. And that's in any movie. There are things, you know, in Shawshank Redemption that people didn't get clicking until 20 years down the line. I do feel that they kind of went too far with his mental instability, but I think that's going to set up kind of that more cold-hearted, calm, maniacal, conniving Lex for future movies. Because what I've seen already from 2 DCEU movies is a lot of character development. A lot of people kind of want Superman to be perfect from the get-go. A lot of people want Lex to be perfect from the get-go. We're going to talk about Batman in his own movie. But what you fail to realize is, even if it is being a bit rushed, there's gradual, you know, significant character development in terms of an arc going on just from 2 movies. And we're going to possibly see a little bit or a lot of Lex in Suicide Squad. I'm literally hoping that we get to see him coming back from a loss, having his first major terrorist plan, you know, blow up in his face, now becomes shaped and molded by that experience. I'm telling you guys, I'm putting money. He's going to impress people. Jesse Eisenberg's Lex is going to impress down the line, and this is not going to change because of the reaction of the fan base. I guarantee you, a lot of this has already been planned ahead of time. If anything, they're probably just kind of going to try to make it more simple and easier to grasp. You know, I could be wrong. This is my personal interpretation. I can put some lines together and it fits solidly and makes sense from the statements before BVS release as well as for after BVS release. But I'm dying to hear your thoughts, and not just I didn't like the actor, I didn't like the portrayal. I want to know why. Like, what specific points, what specific key elements didn't you like? And to make things clear, I'm not saying that Lex's background and interpretation and things was good or bad. I'm just trying to explain it, or at least my interpretation of it. I think too many people just kind of toss Lex out the window because he's not the same Lex from the cartoon. But yeah, next we're going to talk about Batman's cruelty and how that affects pretty much everything from the DCEU. So feel free to click any videos, skip a topic, etc. Subscribe, share the video, tell your friends. It's kind of all over the place because it was hard for me to correctly pinpoint certain things, and I did not have the resources that I wanted to advocately showcase it because I don't have, you know, footage and recordings of the film. So, but yeah, so I'll see you all in the next video.